Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 95.1 FM, 790 AM KFYO. Thank you very much for tuning in. Right now, we head to the phones. GOP political strategist, also has podcast Mac on Politics. It's Matt Mackowiak. Matt, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Chad. I'm doing great. Good morning.
Thanks for joining us today. Let's start off with some Texas Leg news. I know you got into a little bit of this in your morning email. We have about, 7 days left with the legislature. What do you think? Are we heading towards a special session, or do you think everything's going to be cleared up by the 7 days?
You know, on Friday, looked like we might be heading to one, but over the weekend, including last night, we saw the House take action on two legislative items that the Lieutenant Governor said had to pass, and that's property tax reform and the so-called bathroom bill. And the House didn't want to do that on either issue. They really hoped that they could not act on those issues and not have a special session get called. And it appeared that not only was the Lieutenant Governor's demand taken seriously, but I think also the governor, certainly on the bathroom bill issue, signaled that he would be likely to call a special session as well. So I don't think we're going to have one now. At this point, the major issues all moved in both houses. They'll have conference committees. It sounds like there's a deal on the budget now as well. So it's all coming together at the end. It often does. Nobody wants a special session, and it's all coming together at the end.
Who do you think? And I don't know what you've heard. I've heard talk from some lawmakers that are a little upset with the governor, or typical allies of the governor, who have been a little bit disappointed in his leadership style in this session. I know you and I have talked about this before on the air, where he does have a different leadership style than Dan Patrick, and he has much different leadership style than Rick Perry. What does this mean for the governor maybe moving forward after this session? Do you think he changes anything about his style? Do you think, Dan Patrick changes anything? I mean, who's the leader right now in the state of Texas? Is it Dan Patrick or Greg Abbott?
Yeah, listen, these are good questions. Lawmakers, I've heard a lot of those complaints as well. Governor Abbott is much more restrained. He's much more risk-averse, much more careful than we saw in Governor Perry. Every governor's different, and governors learn about how their office works and what their power means over time. And actually, the office of the governor accumulates power over time due to the appointment power of the governor. And so, part of this is, I think, is Abbott is evaluating what the right decisions are, and with a minimal level of controversy, minimal level of political risk. He obviously has things he wants to achieve, and if you look at his emergency items, he's gotten at least 3 of them, and ethics reform looks like it'll be the 4th. So you add voter ID to that. He added voter ID as an emergency item yesterday. Very, very odd to do it that late, but that allows the House to take up voter ID today, which they will. So, I think you still have to look at the session and say, listen, he got most, if not all, of what he wants. Did Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick sort of drive the train? Was he sort of the person that was pushing a lot of these issues and forced the hand of the House at the end? Yes, there's no question that that's the case as well. So I think, these leaders are still kind of feeling each other out, figuring out how to work together. They each have, perhaps slightly different ideological makeups, but they're all working together, and they're, big things are getting done. It may not be quite as smooth as you might want, but they're all figuring out how to work together.
Visiting with Matt Mackowiak, GOP political strategist. Let's take a look at, on the national scene, President Trump. He's overseas. So far, it seems he's had a pretty good trip. He gave a pretty good speech on Islam, yesterday morning in Saudi Arabia, which, I think a lot of people in the national media were waiting for him to fall on his face during that speech. But I thought it was a pretty good speech. How do you think the president has handled his first foreign trip so far, and what can he build on this trip if it keeps going well?
Yeah, so, obviously this is an important trip. You look at the places he's going, you look at the stakes, you look at the domestic political environment in the United States and the controversies. They need a positive trip, and I think going to Saudi Arabia first, doing the work they did ahead of time to get this arms deal agreed to, the largest arms deal in U.S. history. I thought the speech itself was really quite good. It was really in the mainstream of sort of American foreign policy for decades. Really, I think, tried to unify the Arab world, certainly the Sunni Arab world, Sunni Muslim Arab world, against terrorism. And I think if you look at the response in the room, you look at the language he used, I thought it was very, very positive. I thought it was a speech that really all, or certainly most Americans could take pride in. Moving forward, he obviously is in Israel now, but we'll be meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and ultimately with Palestinian Authority President Abbas as well. They're not going to have any major announcements, I don't think, but he wants to begin to build relationships with both of them so he can go after a Middle East peace deal over a period of years, but certainly make an attempt at that in his first term. That's a big goal that he has, and he thinks he can do it. And so I think they'll begin to discuss security issues in the region as sort of the first step along that process. He goes from there to Rome to meet with the Pope, and then to Brussels for meetings related to NATO. So my sense here is that the trip gets more difficult in terms of the degree of difficulty as he goes along. The NATO meetings could be difficult. He and Pope Francis have some pretty strong disagreements on some issues and don't have a previous relationship. So we'll see. Look, I think this does matter. Obviously, there's domestic political consumption, domestic media consumption in the United States of these images of him abroad. The biggest thing you need to do on these initial trips is you want to avoid some type of major controversy or major mistake, and they've done that so far. And if you look at the Saudi Arabia portion, I thought it was a pretty strong success.
Yeah. Real quickly, what did you think about a special counsel being appointed? Good idea, bad idea? How will this work out for the administration?
So I think that there's universal approval and respect for the choice of Bob Mueller, and it does take kind of the politics out of this and puts someone who both sides have tremendous respect for in charge. I think it also has some benefits for the White House, for Republicans on Capitol Hill. The White House now has a few months, certainly, to try and figure out how they want to handle all this, how they want to respond, what their legal strategy is. Different folks can get lawyers if they need to, because Mueller's going to take some time to have to analyze everything they have. You look at Capitol Hill Republicans, they're tired of talking about this, they're tired of talking about Russia, they're tired of being asked about Trump, and now they can just say, listen, there's a special counsel investigating this, I'm going to decline comment until the special counsel completes the review and the investigation. So we'll see where it goes from here. In my latest podcast episode with Alan Dershowitz, we get into the special counsel process, how that works, what some of these allegations mean, whether there's actually criminal wrongdoing, and questions about obstruction of justice and about what the pardon power of the president is. There's a lot here, and the truth is really somewhere in the middle. The Trump White House has one side, the sort of the Democrats and the media have another side. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and we don't really know the facts at this point, and that's what Bob Mueller's job is, to go ascertain the facts, to determine whether he thinks there's a likelihood a crime's been committed, and then prosecute those crimes over time.
Matt Mackowiak, tell folks where they can find your podcast and sign up for your newsletter.
Yeah, the podcast is available on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and on the web at onpolitics.com. The morning email that pulls all the news from around the state of Texas and puts it in one place Monday through Friday is mustreadtexas.com.
All right, as always, Matt, thank you very much. Appreciate your time. We'll visit with you not next week because it's Memorial Day, but the week after.
Sounds good. Have a great week. Take care.
Thank you, Matt.